Have you ever heard the name Spartacus? It's a name that echoes through history, a symbol of rebellion, freedom, and the fight against impossible odds. But who was the man behind the legend? Let's dive into the incredible true story of the gladiator who shook the Roman Republic to its very core. Our story begins not in the grand forums of Rome, but in the rugged lands of Thrace, a region in modern-day Bulgaria. This is where Spartacus was born, around 111 BC. We don't know much about his early life, but ancient historians suggest he might have been an auxiliary soldier in the Roman army. Imagine a fierce, skilled warrior fighting for the very empire that would later enslave him. The details are murky, but one thing is certain. Through desertion, capture, or some other twist of fate, Spartacus was sold into slavery. This wasn't just any form of slavery. Spartacus was sent to Ludus, a gladiator school in Capua, owned by a man named Lentulus Batiatus. Life in the Ludus was brutal. It was a prison where men were trained to kill for the entertainment of others. Every day was a struggle for survival, a constant reminder that their lives were not their own. They were weapons, tools to be used and discarded in the bloody sands of the arena. Spartacus, with his military background and natural charisma, quickly stood out. He wasn't just a fighter, he was a leader. He saw the despair in the eyes of his fellow gladiators, men from Gaul, Germany, and all corners of the conquered world. He saw their shared suffering, and in that shared suffering he saw an opportunity. In 73 BC, the breaking point was reached. Spartacus and about 70 other gladiators hatched a daring plan. Armed with nothing more than kitchen utensils, cleavers, and spits, they overpowered their guards and fought their way to freedom. They seized a wagon full of gladiator weapons and armor, and just like that, a small band of desperate men became a fledgling rebel army. They fled to the slopes of Mount Vesuvius, the very same volcano that would later bury Pompeii. From this strategic high ground, they began to raid the surrounding countryside. News of the breakout spread like wildfire. Slaves from nearby estates, shepherds, and other outcasts saw a flicker of hope. They flocked to join Spartacus, and his small band of 70 grew into a formidable force. These weren't trained Roman legionaries. They were a motley crew of the oppressed. But under Spartacus's command, they became an effective fighting unit. He and his lieutenants, Crixus and Ennomaus, trained them, turning farm tools into weapons and desperation into courage. Rome at first didn't take them seriously. They saw it as a minor slave uprising, something a small local militia could handle. They sent a praetor named Gaius Claudius Glaber with a force of about 3,000 men. Glaber didn't even bother building a proper fortified camp. He simply blocked the only known path down Vesuvius, planning to starve the rebels out. It was a classic arrogant Roman mistake, but Spartacus was no ordinary rebel. He was a brilliant tactician. He had his men gather wild vines from the slopes of the volcano and weave them into long, sturdy ladders. Under the cover of darkness, they did the unthinkable. They rappelled down a sheer, unguarded cliff face on the other side of the mountain. They circled around and launched a surprise attack on the Roman camp. The Romans were caught completely off guard, their camp was overrun, and Glaber's force was annihilated. It was a stunning victory, a David versus Goliath moment that sent shockwaves through the Republic. Suddenly Rome was paying attention. They sent 2 more legions under the command of another praetor, Publius Varinius. Spartacus defeated them not once, but twice in a series of brilliant engagements. His army's numbers swelled to tens of thousands. They now controlled much of southern Italy, plundering estates and capturing more weapons and supplies. Spartacus's goal, it seems, was to lead his people north, out of Italy and over the Alps. He wanted to take them home, back to Gaul and Thrace, where they could be free. By 72 BC, the Senate was in a full-blown panic. This was no longer a minor nuisance. It was a full-scale war, the Third Servile War. They dispatched both consuls for the year, Lucius Gellius and Gnaeus Cornelius Lentulus, each with 2 legions. The plan was to trap Spartacus between their 2 armies. Here, the rebel army faced a critical decision. Spartacus wanted to continue north towards freedom, but one of his key commanders, Crixus, disagreed. He and his followers, mostly Gauls, wanted to stay in Italy to plunder and seek revenge. The rebel army split. This division proved disastrous. Crixus and his force of about 30,000 were cornered and defeated by Gellius. Crixus himself was killed in the battle. It was a heavy blow, but Spartacus was far from finished. Displaying his tactical genius once again, he turned on the pursuing legions. He first defeated Lentulus's army and then turned around and crushed Gellius's army. In a powerful act of poetic justice, Spartacus forced 300 Roman prisoners to fight to the death as gladiators, honoring the memory of Crixus. He had turned the Romans' own cruel entertainment back on them. With the path north now clear, Spartacus marched his army, now estimated at over 120,000 people, including men, women, and children, towards the Alps. They defeated another Roman army sent to block their path. Freedom was within their grasp. They were at the edge of Italy, ready to cross into Gaul, and then, for reasons historians still debate to this day, Spartacus turned back. Why? Did his followers refuse to leave the riches of Italy behind? Did Spartacus believe he could march on Rome itself? Or did he feel a responsibility to liberate every slave in Italy? We may never know for sure. But whatever the reason, the army turned south again, marching back down the Italian peninsula. By this point, Rome had had enough. The Senate, desperate for a commander who could end this humiliating war, turned to one man, Marcus Licinius Crassus. Crassus was the wealthiest man in Rome, ambitious, ruthless, and hungry for military glory. He was given command of 8 legions, a massive army of over 40,000 professional soldiers. Crassus was a different kind of opponent. He was disciplined and relentless. When one of his lieutenants disobeyed orders and attacked Spartacus prematurely, resulting in a defeat, Crassus revived an ancient, brutal form of punishment: decimation. He had 1/10 of the men in the disgraced cohorts beaten to death by their own comrades. The message was clear. Failure would not be tolerated. Fear of Crassus was now greater than fear of the enemy. Crassus systematically cornered Spartacus, trapping him and his army in the toe of Italy in the region of Calabria. Spartacus attempted to make a deal with Cilician pirates to ferry his army to Sicily, hoping to reignite the slave revolts there. But the pirates took his payment and sailed away, abandoning him. Trapped, Spartacus and his army made a heroic attempt to break through Crassus's fortifications during a fierce winter storm. They succeeded, but only a part of the army managed to escape. The end was near. In 71 BC, the final battle was fought. The rebel army, weary and outnumbered, made their last stand. Ancient sources say that Spartacus fought with incredible bravery, cutting his way through the Roman lines in a desperate attempt to reach Crassus himself. He killed 2 centurions before being surrounded and cut down. His body was never identified. With their leader gone, the rebellion was crushed. Crassus was merciless in his victory. He crucified 6,000 captured slaves along the Appian Way, the main road from Capua to Rome. The horrific display served as a brutal warning to anyone who would ever dare to dream of defying the power of Rome again. Though he was defeated, the legend of Spartacus was just beginning. He became more than a man. He became an idea. For 2,000 years, his story has inspired countless people fighting against oppression. He was a slave who became a general, a gladiator who became a liberator, a man who dared to challenge the most powerful empire in the world for the simple, profound right to be free. And that is a story that will never be forgotten. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more stories that shaped our world. See you next time.